Hey everyone. On today's episode, Drew, Tate, and I discuss what we believe is the most foundational principle of leadership, and that is the principle of taking 100% responsibility. And look, don't let that scare you. We get into a lot around how we can recognize that we are truly responsible for everything about our life and how that's great news because we get to also be a part of the solutions and creating our life to be what we want it to be. Enjoy. Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. Today, Tate and Drew and myself, we are going to discuss something that is really, really foundational to being an everyday leader, and that is taking personal responsibility. And that, I know we talk about this a lot. A lot of the terms we use, we feel like are really diluted terms out in the world. And this is another one to add to the list, right? It's like responsibility. We've been hearing about that since the time we were kids. And we hope that by the end of this episode, you have a little bit different perspective on what it means to take personal responsibility in a very real and deep way. So to start out, whenever we were discussing what to talk about today, I sent in our group text just one quote instead of saying responsibility. And what I sent was a quote that was, "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." And ever since I heard that song by the very well-known Taylor Swift, it just stuck with me. It was like, and I don't even know the rest of the song, right? But that part of it, it
That's
just
what you
played.
say, Matt.
Yeah, yeah. It plays in my head so often when I'm in situations where it's like, man, what's going on? Like, why is that person this? Like, why aren't people listening? Whatever. It's like, well, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. So, with that being said, I would love to hear both of your thoughts around that. Like, how does that land for you guys individually? And let's just talk through for a minute, starting there with like, it's you. Hi, you're the problem. It's you.
It's sobering. It's a sobering thought, and I think it's a very real thought in that there's always circumstances or situations or whatever that we aren't in control of, and we are in control of ourselves and the way we respond to those. And I think for me, ultimately, that's what this is saying. And with that comes, the times of, okay, you see you're in a situation or circumstance that you feel very not in control. One of the things to do is to change your situation or your environment or circumstances or whatever. And, that essentially puts the accountability back on you. It's like, man, I'm in this situation because of choices that I made or have made or everything along the way. And so even if it's not like a specific interaction or a specific event that happens that you're taking responsibility for, you have to take responsibility for, I was there that day. And what decisions did I make that allowed that?
Yeah.
Like led up to that for me.
Well, and even like the circumstances may be 100% out of your control. And ultimately, right, when you break down the word responsibility, it's your ability to respond. So, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what happened outside of your control, we always have the ability to respond. And that is our choice, right? Yeah. Love that, Tate.
Yeah,
This concept has just the idea of responsibility and its relationship with choice and control was a principle I remember being taught at 20, 21 years old that has really been kind of a life-changing principle for me. And it's interesting when others don't see things this same way, this lens. In fact, so we had when I was serving a missionary as a missionary for my church, we had one of our church higher ranking church official come, and his name was Lynn G. Robbins. And I remember him teaching us about the relationship between responsibility, being 100% responsible, and then how responsibility actually brings you more control in your life. And that when you shirk responsibility, you're essentially saying if you say I'm not responsible, then you say I have no control. And so that's been like an eye-opening thought for me that I think about often, and I've thought about often in my life. When I say, oh, it wasn't my fault, then I'm saying I have no control of this situation. And then when you say that, when I've said that, at least it's allowed me to reflect and say, okay, was there really anything I could have done? Could I have said something different? Could I have checked in and followed up more with my team? Could I have implemented a process? And this could apply to your team, your organization, your family. And I've just found it's interesting how often when I say we, I'm just talking about people in general, when something goes wrong, how easy it is for people to say, well, it wasn't my fault. And in doing that, you're essentially saying, well, I don't have any control of this. And so that's just been eye-opening. I try not to ever say, hey, it wasn't my fault. Because often if you think hard enough, it's like, oh, this went wrong. And if I'm a leader, there was probably something I could have done.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to kind of point out in that, saying, hey, it's not my fault is quickly followed by true blame. And so essentially you're blaming somebody else or something else. And to your point, that's completely giving up every bit of control you have in that situation to whoever or whatever that is. And, my personal opinion is it's really hard to hold yourself accountable and blame in the same breath.
Yeah. Because it's shifting it to someone else.
Well, let me give it just like a common example I hear from people in business all the time. They'll say something like, well, the economy's not good, or we don't have the budget for marketing that other companies do. And like essentially what you're saying when you say that is like, oh, well, because of the external circumstances, like we have no control over our business and our success. And you could find a bunch of other situations outside of business where people do this. And I think it's really fascinating to just think about that concept.
Yeah. Yep. And the same thing applies with your family. It's like, well, my child has XYZ issue, or my spouse has XYZ tendency, or whatever it might be, or my family member, my parents. Yeah. Like you can acknowledge those, and those can be real, and you still have 100% ability to respond to those circumstances. And so before anyone gets too down on themselves about being the problem, recognize that what we're saying in that, and Taylor Swift did not say this. Next time I talk to her, I'll say, hey, write another song and include this part, which is you're also the solution. Like it's you, hi, you're right there, also able to respond powerfully and have a solution. Whereas to your point earlier, that as long as it's not you, it's someone else or something else, then you don't have any responsibility in what it could be, or how it could get created differently, or how it could get shifted or improved or solved. So don't get too down on yourself as being the problem. It's actually great news that you're the problem, because then you're also 100% the solution.
Yeah. And I think that posture of, blame or, whatever you want to call it, somebody else's fault, is very dangerous to any sort of growth. You've got to be in that place of, hey, what can I do? How can I improve? How can I, where do I go from here? And actively doing that. Otherwise it's easy to stay in that loop.
Yeah. So my friend Mitch Whiting talks about how, like, one of the things that he says all the time is so foundational is that circumstances are neutral. So if you're asking yourself, like, well, what does this look like in real life? How do I get better at this? Start by considering this underlying belief that you can choose to adopt, because that's also your choice, that circumstances are neutral, meaning circumstances don't decide anything for you. You decide everything for you. And that's just a powerful underlying belief to move throughout your life and your world, is that this thing in front of me, this thing that's happening, this thing that someone's saying to me, doesn't get to decide what I experience. I decide. Like it in and of itself is neutral. Even the most horrific things you can think of, it's still, you get to decide how you respond to those circumstances. And So that's helped me a ton to just believe that and recognize that my circumstances, the things that I come up against on a daily and hourly basis, are neutral in terms of how it affects my response and my emotion and my action or inaction.
Yeah, and kind of along that note, I had a concept I was, I don't know, reading about or studying about lately, and I can't even remember where. We Another thing we blame often, if when people talk about their feelings, and I look, I recognize I do this still myself, and I'm trying to get better at it, and it starts by being aware of it. Is we blame the way we feel on our circumstances. Oh, this happened. Like, oh, I'm feeling this way because you did this. I'm feeling this way because this terrible thing happened in my life. Not to say that there's not a right place to have emotions when certain situations or difficult circumstances come across. And it's just, as I've thought about that principle, it's interesting how often people say, oh, well, you're making me feel this way, or that made me feel this way. To your point, Matt, it's like you're essentially giving up
Your power.
control in those moments when you do that and when that happens.
Yeah. Well, so okay, I got a couple of examples. If you're listening to this and wondering what does this look like, and to what you just said, Drew, certainly I'll speak for myself, like not perfect at this, right? It's one thing to understand this principle, it's a whole nother to demonstrate it powerfully all the time. And it does invite progress though when you adopt this as like a way of thinking and as a belief. So okay, a couple examples. One is that I coach youth baseball, which I love dearly, and there's times when, and this happens in my family all the time with my kids, right? It's like you go over things, you practice things, you talk about things, you discuss things, you set standards around things, and then the same things keep happening, or the things you want to change don't change, or the same tendencies show up, or like we're still not going out towards center field with our arms up saying cut off, right? We're just chilling, watching the play unfold, even though we're on the baseball field, or whatever it might be. And so again, the natural tendency for all of us is to be frustrated by that. It's like these people aren't doing the thing I want them to do, or be filled with disbelief or incredulousness. Like, I can't believe we're having this conversation again. These are things that real life come up for me a lot. And in that moment, when I choose to have it be their fault, they're the problem, then I react very poorly, right? It's like, hey, you're not doing the thing or whatever, right? And usually, like, not anything crazy, but it's not useful. It's not powerful, and not a powerful response. When I step back and see that and realize, like, oh, I'm the problem. Like, I haven't created a system for this to be happening. I haven't created a mechanism to remind people. I haven't created the environment for people to want to listen and learn, or I haven't practiced with them enough to internalize it. Whatever it might be, there's a lot of different things. And then it's like, oh, now I get to have a response to this thing I'm seeing that's causing frustration. And so I also, after this specific example happened the other night, I actually sent a message to everyone on the team, to all the parents, and said, like, hey, I'm sorry if sometimes, like, I forget these things that I know are true and react poorly. And now I'm definitely in the mode of, like, how do I respond more powerfully? Like, what am I going to do different tomorrow night at practice than we have been in response to this? And it just feels good. It feels like we can get somewhere. We can do something. We can recover, change, progress.
I think it's an interesting thought as I listen to that, is how this can kind of overlay the conversation of expectations of people as well, and how internal that truly is. Back to it's me. So many times our own expectations of situations or people or circumstances are truly what end up causing our pain, not anything else. Like, our own expectations do that. That might be completely, like, irrational.
Yep, totally. That is so true. Okay, so I have another quick example, and then I will be talking less. I promise. I told these guys before we hit record that I was going to be talking a lot today, because I have relevant examples. So after said baseball game the other night. We went to go get a few groceries and get the kids something to eat before we went home. And so we were at a grocery store that happens to have pizza in it, and it was not Costco because Costco was closed. And if you work at Costco and you're listening to this, please help me understand why you close at 6:00 p.m. I digress. So we go to a different grocery store to get groceries, and they also happen to sell some food like up in the front. So we go up. I'm kind of looking at the menu, talking with the cashier, asking some questions, and ultimately, like, we wanted to have half a pizza that was just cheese and the other half have a couple toppings on it. So to your point, Tate, like in my mind, I have this expectation, like, well, you could just take the meat off of the half that was supposed to be right and make it cheese and put it on the other half. Well, I did a horrible job of explaining that and made assumptions and had expectations. And so the guy rings it up and it's like way more money than what I was expecting because like what I thought I had said. So the details don't really matter other than I was like, well, hey, that's not really what I thought was going to happen. And I'm like, can we adjust it? Yeah, no problem. Sorry for the confusion. This guy's saying this to me, like, oh, sorry, I wasn't clear. And I'm like, no, you know what? That's on me. I said this to him. I'm like, I am sorry. I created that confusion. I made assumptions and like didn't explain what I wanted very well. And the guy's like, well, that's cool. Like, thanks for taking responsibility. And I was like, I've just found that my life is way more free and fun when I take responsibility instead of trying to blame other people. And the guy like stops behind the counter and he's just like, oh, I guess that would make a big difference. And so it just felt really good again in that moment. Like I'm down this path of reaction, of frustration, but nothing changed. Like the same dude was still standing there. The same misunderstanding was still happening. The same other things of the day were still kind of in the back of my mind. And yet in that moment, choosing to see like, oh, I'm choosing to be annoyed. Like I created this. I'm the problem. It's me. And I can also just as easily be like, hey, you know what? I acknowledge like I just created that confusion. I'm sorry. Like, let's get this figured out.
One of my favorite examples of this too isn't even a specific event, but every time I drive to Phoenix, you're in traffic, you're watching other drivers, whether they're on their phone or whatever, and it's easy to get like just immediately annoyed rather than thinking, man, my responsibility is to keep me and whoever's in this vehicle safe, and anyone else that, I can't control what's going on over there. And if that's how they want to respond and react, then that's kind of on them. And why would I choose to allow what somebody else does in traffic affect me in that moment or the rest of the day or the rest of the week or whatever based on something I have zero control over?
Yep. It's wild. And we do it all the time. And
Yeah,
you can see why
totally.
sometimes we carry all this extra weight because that's like one little example of driving.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
compound
Okay.
it by all the things we hold on to.
And at the end of the day, even if it's speeding or whatever, we're talking about 2 or 3 minutes by the time you get there. Like,
Yeah. Tops.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I told you guys I wanted to share this quote today. Oak, who was on a previous episode of ours, wrote a book about leadership, and this is from his book. It's an example of President Eisenhower. And he says, when President Eisenhower, the great U.S. Army general, encountered a problem in his organization, the first thing he would do is search for the source of that problem. He would get up and walk a circle around his desk. If he didn't find the source there, he would walk a bigger circle around the offices near his. If he still didn't find the source of the problem, he would walk a larger circle. He'd keep expanding the circle until he found the source of the problem. Why did he start by walking a circle around his own desk? He started there because he knew that he may have been the source of the problem. That sort of self-awareness is critical. I just really love that example, that idea of just like in my mind, seeing someone pace around their desk first before going down the office and yelling, yelling at someone else. And I, I really believe that, I mean, often the problem starts with me, right? And if there's a problem in our business or there's a problem in our family, problem in our life, like I've found there's two areas we can usually look at. It's usually our own leadership or the leadership of the organization or the systems and processes involved in that organization. I know Matt's you're anti-management. I've just come to believe that management's for the systems and processes, and leadership's for the people. So,
Yeah, and Drew, I am coming a long ways understanding that and recognizing that there's still systems with people that are very effective, but they actually allow you to be a leader so that you don't have to manage
yep.
them. And then you can focus all your management desires on systems and processes. So yeah, no, I love that quote, Drew. Thanks for sharing that. And so just to take it back to, like, again, if you're starting to feel this weight around, like, oh, it's me, I'm the problem, dang it, like, that's heavy. It's okay. You know, President Eisenhower is describing what he's describing here is sometimes, like, there are issues that are not necessarily you, and it's still your responsibility to go figure out, well, what am I going to do to address them, solve them, get other people involved, help other people see things that they can't see. That's still you taking action and taking responsibility, even though the problem itself may not be something that you even knew about or had any control over. So I love that. I love that idea that there's so many factors involved in, like, issues in families and in business, but keeping it on, like, well, what am I going to do about it is the best bet for you to find progress and freedom and fulfillment in your pursuit of growth and solving.
Well, and I've seen this many times in business and everything else, where let's say a decision needs made, and it could go a couple different ways, maybe very differing opinions, whatever. Well, some people take the posture of setting back and not make a decision. And I think it's important to point out that not making a decision is a decision.
Right.
And a lot of people do that with the ability to be like, well, I didn't make that call. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. I mean, kind of back to the blame thing. But it's also not a taking accountability that, man, I had the opportunity to make a decision. I had the information, whatever, and I didn't. And that's just as powerful.
And to that note, both what you guys just said, if you truly aren't the problem, then you shouldn't be worrying about it, or you have or you can take on some responsibility and go to make a change. Like, if it's truly someone else's fault, then I think you either have to be willing to say, you know what, I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not going to get upset about it if this is outside of my control, because I don't have any control over the situation. Or it's like, okay, I can take some control by maybe taking on some responsibility that maybe wasn't mine to begin with, if I'm not happy with the outcomes that are happening.
So one thing before the show, you mentioned the economy, and I think that's a good one that people tend to blame things on. And I'm going to kind of ask the question centered around COVID, which was a time that we saw a lot of businesses do really well because of it, and a lot of other businesses go completely out because of it. And I say because of it because it was kind of that event that kind of changed and shook things up. Not to say that it truly is the sole responsibility or cause of any of it, but I just kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on when you're talking about those extremely distant, removed things from you as an individual. Like, how does that come into play in some of this?
For me, it's still really useful to acknowledge things for as they are or how they occur to you, right? So to your example, like, this really external, far away from me thing is happening, I can acknowledge all of that for what it is and what it's trying to do to me, or the circumstance it's thrusting on me, and I still get to decide how I respond. So I'm just thinking through, like, because I have a lot of empathy for businesses that were, ultimately didn't make it, or whatever. And the reality is, like, you get to choose how you internalize all that, how you respond to all of that. And maybe there's a pivot, right? I mean, I think a lot of the successful businesses that made it through or thrived in it actually, like, made some serious pivots, not just like, oh, this thing fell into my lap and now it's, like, way better. I think that it was an intentional response. Opportunities came up that didn't exist before, chances to pivot, things like that. And or, hey, I see this totally new opportunity, I'm going to close this one, which is still, like, an intentional response, like a powerful response, to choose to end something instead of, like, I'm a victim, this thing shut me down. It's just not true, right? And if you believe that's true, then you have no power, no freedom, because you just said that thing over there did something to you and did something for you, and that's not actually true.
It was interesting for me at that time because I just had changed companies that I was working at, same industry, but I'd made a transition in companies after working at a startup company that I had made no income for like 3 months. So, we get this shelter in place order, and I just made a change, and I'm like, nope. I'm telling on myself a little bit. And I just was like, you know what? I don't care what's happening. Like, I'm in a position right now where I have to figure this out and make it work. And up to that point, I'd never had a year better financially than I did during COVID. And to your point, Matt, I'm empathetic and I feel for the businesses that were lost, or those that, because of maybe some things that were outside of their control, how the effect it had on them. And I just remember at that time, I remember a few years before, a conversation I had with a friend who'd started his business in '08 and did very well and was very successful. And I think you can pivot, and I think you can turn lemons into lemonade, and doesn't mean it's always going to go smooth or perfect or how you picture it. And so, yeah, I think it's I think a lot about Robert Kiyosaki talks about how, the rich or the best investors, they make money in up and down markets, like. And and I just think it's possible. It doesn't just have to be business and finances. I think you look at great leaders, it doesn't matter what's going on, they make the most out of whatever those circumstances are.
Yeah, I mean, and on a personal note, I imagine that the two of you can relate as well. We had opportunities to do things as a family and spend time as a family that would not have happened otherwise. Even like, churches closed down and can't go to church. We had some amazing experiences as a family during that time. I mean, there's a huge list of amazing things that came from that time period, as well as like a lot of the real challenges that people faced, obviously. And so, yeah, to say otherwise would just be doing you a disservice. If you want us to sit on here on this podcast and say like, "Oh yeah, like you poor thing, there's nothing you could do about it." It's not true. We love you too much to tell you that. We love you enough to be like, "Hey, it was you. You were the problem." And the solution, right?
Yeah, that's
So, one other thought that I'm having, and again, this is like very present for me as I have multiple experiences over the last couple of weeks where I was choosing not to be very responsible and wanting to find other people to blame. Whenever I kind of fall back on that belief, like, okay, the circumstances are neutral, I'm responsible. Like, what am I going to do about it? It can start to feel heavy. It really can, and it can start to mess with your self worth and the way you see yourself. And like, wow, okay, like I'm not a powerful leader or whatever, right? Like it can mess with the way you're talking to yourself and the way you're thinking about yourself. And so I just want you to be aware of that, right? Like that it's actually really empowering to have the belief that you get to respond. And so when you see that creeping in, like, well, then it's my fault, like I messed it up, I wrecked it. Quickly choose to turn that into, and now I get to go repair it. Like if you messed up, acknowledge it. If you hurt someone, apologize. If you didn't show up powerfully, like, go tell them like, hey, I'm committed to showing up better for you, and just staying on that side of it, which is like I get to respond. It keeps you in action. It keeps you looking at what you can do to better the situation, and not get stuck in like that kind of blaming yourself isn't super powerful, right? Like taking responsibility and blaming yourself are kind of different. Blaming yourself is more like kind of, I'm the worst, I can't do it. That's not really gonna help you step into what you want.
one thing we may want to touch on too a little bit is I think it could be a little bit dangerous for an idea like this without the right mindset or the right kind of environment and start to it. I'm sure we've all known people or had friends in the past that kind of get deep into that. I don't know if you want to call it victim posture or blame game or what have you. And I think, we need to be cognizant of the idea that just saying, hey, I'm the problem, that could dig a deeper hole. And I
Right.
think, we need to make sure we're shedding this in the right light, that it's not you're the problem. It's like Matt has reiterated several times, you're the solution to all this. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to dig you out of a hole. Nobody's going to, not to say there won't be people to support you and show up and be there when you need it. At the end of the day, though, every day it takes that individual making those strides and coming up with those solutions and moving forward. And it's pretty powerful when you can look at that in the right light.
Yeah, I think maybe don't tell yourself I am the problem. Say I am the solution.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think that's the point Tate's
Mhm.
making is, and that you've made as well, Matt, that it'd be very easy to just, bury your head in the sand and I'm the problem, when it's like, no, the good news is you are the solution. And, it's interesting. I've been sitting here thinking about, as we've been talking, what are the times in my life I've irked, like, or shirked away from, I don't know if that is that a real word,
Yes.
shirked from responsibility. What are the times in my life I've blamed others? And I don't know if this is true for everyone. And I think as I've sat here thinking about that, I think the most unhappy times in my life have been when I've done that. The most unhappy I've been is when I've blamed someone else, when I've said it's everybody else's fault but my own. And I think the flip side is that I'm happier, almost to your point at the counter, at the pizza counter, Matt. Like I forgot how you said it, but it's like when I'm choosing to be responsible, I'm choosing to be happy in a sense. And I can see that as I've been sitting here, I've been thinking some of the most miserable times in my life have been when I've been blaming everybody else.
Because we're not free. Because when you're doing that, you're giving away your power. You're
Yeah.
giving away your responsibility. And so, yeah, that's not a happy place to be. It feels very stuck, very empty, very low, very lonely. I would agree. I can think of some not so happy times when there was a lot of blame going on, mostly subconsciously. Like I think if I went back in time and someone asked me like, "Are you blaming people right now?" I'd be like, "No," and like I definitely was.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to point out is this doesn't necessarily have to mean you go tell the world that, hey, I'm, I'm taking responsibility for all these things or anything else. It's more of an internal thing for me of, like you said, you would have verbally said, I'm not blaming, but internally you were handling that very different. And so I think that's the more powerful thing, is to make sure that internally, like, you're dealing with them, and truly not blaming, if that's the case.
Okay, guys, that's pretty good. Pretty good topic. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is very foundational to leadership, self leadership. I like when I think about leadership in terms of something that's built, it's definitely at the foundation. And um, because as long as it's not there, then it's not you. Like you don't have the power. And what I'll just recommend a book that I read that really helped me with this. And it's very well written. It's in story form. It's very popular. And I was surprised it took me until I was 30 years old to hear about it. So some of you maybe haven't heard of it as well. And it's called Leadership and Self Deception. And it's a great read, great book at helping you realize and internalize what we're talking about here. That like, oh, I'm choosing to blame. I'm choosing to hide. I'm choosing to pretend like it's someone else's issue or it's someone else's responsibility or someone else could fix it, but but my hands are tied. It does a very good job of helping you see that. So, Leadership and Self Deception, written by the Arbinger Institute. I highly recommend if you're looking for a good book on this topic. Any final thoughts, Tate or Drew?
There's probably a ton. Probably one we could give examples of different things one way or another for probably another hour. And I think, just to reiterate the whole conversation, it's getting yourself into that solution that I'm the one responsible for my circumstances, and that could mean a lot of different things. That doesn't mean that anybody's blaming you or that it's bad. It just means that, man, the choices you make, where you live, where you work, where, the things you do, who you hang out with, who you don't, all those things are really your responsibility, and you get to make those choices. And I know there's at times that's conflicting. It doesn't always feel that way. But it is that way. And I would also say that, with all this taking responsibility and everything else, not everything needs fixed.
Great point.
And so that's kind of that decision that I'm talking about is, sometimes with all this is there's, let's just call it change, can be part of getting to a healthier place. And that's okay. I mean, that's part of it. And that's truly acknowledging it and seeing it for what it is, and kind of maybe not specific instances, but as a whole. Like, I'm here because of decisions along over years, in some cases. So,
Yeah, I would reiterate that and say, yeah, you are the solution. I had to summarize things up today. If you aren't happy, ask yourself, are there areas in your life where you're avoiding responsibility or things that you're blaming? Like I said, that was kind of a realization for me today in this conversation. And also we don't talk about this enough on our group, but if you're listening to this and you want more of these conversations, like we have these every month with our group, The Climb. So reach out to us if you want to be a part of a group that dives into this kind of leadership and self-reflection every week. And I'm just grateful for what this, and I'm still working on it, but I'm grateful, like learning this early in my life, what it's done for me to think about, okay, well, do I have a choice? Am I responsible for this? And be able to recognize that if I want something to change, it's usually on me. So
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. And yeah, to our listener, take a long, hard look. And if anything came up for you today, take a moment and decide what's the next step to shift that, to go from, oh, this is happening to me, or someone else's problem or someone else's fault, to how can I influence it? How can I respond powerfully? And whatever comes to your mind, take that action. And remember that you always have a choice in how you respond, no matter what. No one can ever actually take that away. Nothing can ever actually take that away. So whatever you're avoiding, whatever you're hiding from, wherever you're blaming, take a look and go address it. Today's the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.